Today's episode is part 2 of my conversation with adventure filmmaker Ryan Pyle about his wild record-setting ride around China. So in part 1, we covered pre-production and production, planning the ride, surviving it, actually circumnavigating the country. And now in part 2, Ryan is back home in Shanghai. The ride is over, the record is set, and now comes the hard part. This is the story of how Tough Ride to China became more than just a TV show, but an entire TV franchise. Here we go. In some ways, the journey isn't done because now we're in post-production. You have all this footage. What do you do next? What is your plan?
We basically didn't understand how to budget for post-production. And we didn't kind of do a proper understanding of the post-production landscape. So for people who don't know out there, if you spend $100 on a traditional broadcast television show, about 60 to 70% of those dollars are going to be on post-production, and 30 to 40% of the budget is going to be on production. That's like a typical kind of adventure TV show. It might be more if you've got A-level celebrities and you have to pay them more for production. But if you just got two guys on a bike, it's about 70-30 post-production, production. So the majority of the budget was for post-production, but we hadn't really budgeted for post-production. So we came back with all this footage, and it was funny because like we were posting on Facebook back in the day because there was no Instagram, and so we were getting quite a lot of attention, and we had a lot of media attention when we finished the trip, and then we put together this big package to Guinness to see if they would give us a world record for being the first people to circumnavigate China in that way, and they did, and we got a Guinness World Record, and we got a lot of attention for it, but we had no idea how to figure out the TV part of it, and eventually, I through some friends, we found some people who could kind of consult for us on how to get that out. And then we were introduced to a brilliant editor named Jack Woon, based out of New Zealand. And he was able to put together, an edit. And we basically, I was able to look at the show and be like, okay, like each episode needs to be 22 to 26 minutes, 22 if it's in the US, 26 if it's in Europe. This is traditional broadcasting. This isn't YouTube or whatever. And then, how many beats of like chunky scenes do we need for each episode? So yeah, that was something we had to work out. And eventually we came to this conclusion that like, I wanted to have 10 episodes, but that was going to cost too much, take up too much editor's time. So we went for this like super condensed, super fast paced 6 episodes, really ripping through. But if we had a bigger budget, I think we could have done more episodes because there was so much footage we didn't use, which is, again, what makes the book hopefully valuable.
Right. Just to go back for a second, you submitted to Guinness to see if you would get a new record, and you did, which is incredible. What was that record that you set?
It was the longest motorcycle trip without backtracking or overlapping. And they wanted like GPS waypoints, hotel bills, gas station bills, like to prove that we were actually in all these locations along the way. And then there were other places where we had to like divert because of military reasons, and they kind of accepted that. Like, so that was kind of nice. But, we got a lot of backlash for that too, because people are like, well, that's not a real record or whatever. I mean,
why? What was the back?
I don't know. Whenever you do something cool, people get,
that is the law of accomplishment, right?
Yeah. So that's fine. And like no one else had gotten like a similar style, like world record. So we kind of like created our own category. But at the end of the day, like Guinness is a publisher, and they want to sell books. So to have 2 Canadians doing this journey helped them sell books in Canada. And on the Canadian version of the book, we were right there on like the first page on the inset. And it's like 2 Canadians ride, and it's like, okay, I get it. Like you want to sell books. We did something cool. There's your, and then in other versions of the books, like the UK one and the US one, we're tucked away on like page 300 and whatever. But on the Canadian one, we're like right there on page 2 or 3.
Huge.
Yeah. So, they're just trying to sell books and trying to educate kids about cool things and things like that. And I get it, but it was nice to get that recognition. Yeah.
And so you had mentioned working with an editor putting together that initial edit, but were you flagging footage throughout when you were looking at dailies, or not at all?
No, we weren't flagging footage because we didn't know what we were doing. But I knew because of the video diaries and because I was making notes every day too, like, oh, today we stopped and like I tried to talk to camels with a microphone or something like that. Like, okay, that could be kind of funny in a silly way. Okay, today we visited the last section of the Great Wall of China. Okay, that has to be something. So I knew like where the gems were along the way. And then I was also making notes of like, oh, today we pulled off the road and had a crazy gas station experience. So I circled that and then the date, right? So I kind of knew where the stuff was and what days were more interesting than others.
Yeah.
Um, so I was able to kind of put together like the architecture of what each episode would kind of look like. And again, Jack really helped me with that as well. And then it was really kind of understanding how it all fits together in a bigger picture. Because when we first, like no one wants to sit down and watch two guys ride motorcycles around China and watch 26 minutes of GoPro footage of them riding on the highway. Like they want to get to know you. How do they get to know you? There needs to be some backstory. You need to be, we need to use some video diaries. So, I miss my wife, or today was really tough and I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish. Like they want to understand how you're going up and down emotionally throughout this entire journey.
Right.
So we just had to like find those beats that help to tell the story without going into this kind of conflict zone that everyone seemed to want us to go into. Like they wanted it to be like Real Housewives or something. Like, fuck that shit. Like we were out there having a really positive experience. And I get that positivity and teamwork doesn't sell as well as bitchiness and catfighting. But that's what it was.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to,
They wanted the shot of you being served divorce papers on the highway and like, all that crazy. So when you were working with an editor, did you at that point know where it was going to end up? Like you said, you mentioned 22 minutes for US, 26 for Europe. Did you know, was YouTube even a thing? Were you trying to get on the network broadcasters? What were you eyeing?
So all the broadcasters said no to us before the trip. All of the broadcasters. So when we finished the trip, I rewrote to all the broadcasters that said no. And I was like, hey, we did our trip. Are you interested in helping us edit? Like, because you'll pay us for the footage. You'll pay us to put this TV show together after the fact. And I thought that could be a thing. Like, hey, Nat Geo, we're done. We crushed it. How about you give us some money so we can finish this and then you can broadcast it. But all those conversations went nowhere either. So we actually had to foot the bill for a lot of the post-production ourselves. And then we had an agent in Holland, a film and television agent based out of Amsterdam that took the finished product to market. So basically, once we were done trying to pitch it to broadcasters, we learned that there's these things called television agents that syndicate TV shows. And basically we sold it the same way someone sells a film. Like you get an agent and then they pitch it to all the broadcasters. And then at the end of the day, Travel Channel in the UK bought it. And then that was kind of the beginning of my career. Because once they bought it and showed it, it did well. And then Colin and I did India. So, and then Colin retired because India was tough. And then I did Brazil by myself, and I'm trying to do Tough Rides again next year. So the franchise was kind of born with that Travel Channel, but now Travel Channel doesn't even exist. And I don't even know what happened to them. They got swallowed up by Discovery Channel, and now Discovery Warner is about to get swallowed up by Netflix or Paramount. So
yes.
So now we have to find different distribution. But at the time, Travel Channel UK bought the show and ran with it, and it did really well.
And you sold them edited episodes? Like you had to finish post-production yourself. So here you are again, it's that guerrilla filmmaking, it's that guerrilla post-production. You put this together, you boil it down to 6 episodes that you sold to them?
Yeah, so the film and television agent in Holland, in Amsterdam, wouldn't take a semi-finished show, and they wouldn't invest in the post-production. So we had to finish it to give it to the agent.
Everything yourself.
Yeah, and it's funny because there were so many times where I like put my foot down. I'm like, I'm not going to spend any more money on this. And then it was like, here's another couple grand. Like, here's like, it's just, it's really dangerous to want to make a career out of your passion project, because when it's your passion, there's no end to it. And you constantly use your intellect to justify means and ways to keep pushing forward, even when you shouldn't. And I was really lucky that worked out for me, but it doesn't work out for everyone. And I think that's super dangerous, because I think one of the most important things in business is to know when to cut your losses and move on. And when it's your passion project, and when you were as desperate as I said this at the beginning, like I was so desperate for a career change. and so aware that my current, career in writing and photography wasn't going to be what I wanted it to be 3 or 5 years out from where we were at that moment. So I was in this kind of panic desperation to get this done and get it out into the real world and try to create a new career for myself. And that mix just made it kind of this endless money drain
Yeah.
of having to keep spending
Yeah.
to get it out into the world. And I was lucky again that it worked out, because it doesn't for so many.
Did you end up recouping from when you sold it to Travel Channel UK?
No way.
No.
No. We didn't make money on Tough Rides. I think Tough Rides China, we lost a lot. Tough Rides India, maybe we broke even. And then Tough Rides Brazil, we made money on that.
Yeah.
And then, but the show continues to make money. Like it's on Amazon Prime. It's on Patreon, which is a service that I use now to put out new work.
And you're doing commentary too for each episode,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. I really, so I thought, like, what's a great way to kind of have a value added, to the Patreon experience without just putting up, archival episodes of stuff.
Right.
And that's, 15 years later to go back and talk about it.
It's huge. Well, that's cool, because you made this, and now how can you keep it working for you?
Yeah.
Because you put all that work into it. Like you said, I mean, it's like a film. You're not going to make money on your first film, but you're hopefully going to make money over a career. Yeah. And so it's not about that first project, but it can cost you everything in the moment. And I can imagine that kind of self-dialogue of like, I didn't come this far to not spend a little bit extra to make this part nicer. You have those nice map graphics, right?
Endless.
Which is great, a visual, but like all these little touches and all these little things. And of course it's like,
color correction, sound mixing,
right,
voiceovers,
right,
take your pick.
Right.
Now I know what the line items look like.
Yeah.
Well, I've fucking done it 50, 60 times, 50 or whatever, how many episodes I've made over the years. But that first time was just daunting and miserable. And again, too, you've got a partner who may or may not be fully on board. So it's like, honey, I need to pay this guy like $3,000 to do maps for 6 episodes. 5 months. Yeah. It's like, fuck, it's a never ending. Like, can't you pick another career? And it's like, no, this is my calling. And it's like, if you don't have someone in the household that's fully on board, and I don't know how that's possible, because that's a big ask, not a lot of partners would be up for that kind of roller coaster.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. And there were turbulent times for sure. Like, and my brother's wife, like she's lovely, but she had a really difficult time understanding why we would want to do that to ourselves. Because most people don't want to go out and torture themselves to tell a great story for 60 days and have this physical change. Like, we lost all this weight, we had these big beards. We like lost so much weight in our faces. Like we looked like skeletons with beards by the end of it from the stress and the exhaustion. But but not a lot of people like realize what that does to you as a human being. Like when you set out to do a task and then you assemble a team to do it. Sounds like a fucking Avengers commercial, but like when you set out to do this really tough task and you assemble a team to do it and then you fucking do it, like you feel invincible. It's like, holy shit, I can do anything. And then I went out and made more aggressive, more difficult TV shows after that because I knew I could do it. But without having done that first one, like that, I mean, I did this, I'm still doing this today. And, where would I have been if I had quit, at some stage because I couldn't pay the map guy a couple grand or something like that. But again, I was really lucky that somehow I managed it, or the stars aligned where I was able to make a career out of it.
And what was the timeline roughly for post-production? You get back, how long does it take you to get to the Travel Channel UK sale?
18 months.
A year and a half.
And maybe 24 months until it even came out. So
2 years.
So that stress actually of waiting until it was sold was worse than doing the actual trip, because it's like, hey, I just spent all this money doing this fucking amazing thing. It's like, is anyone ever going to see it? Is anyone ever going to see it? Is anyone ever going to pay for it? And those questions haunted me more on a daily basis after we did the big thing. Mm-hmm. That was more concerning. And then after that, I learned, like, I'm never going to go into production unless I have a broadcaster ready, because then I know the timeline, then I know the date, then I can work backwards and I can schedule everything, right? And then I know, like, I can tell people like, hey, November Thursday nights, 9 p.m., we're coming out, right?
Right.
But until then, everyone's like, oh, you did this amazing thing. Where's the footage? Oh, you're a fucking liar. Oh, you did this. Oh, you never really did that. Oh, did you even film at all? Like, and you have to deal with that and all those questions. And then when you finally put it out in the world, it's the big, like, I told you so, but no one wants to hear that. So you just kind of have to humbly be like, yeah, we had a lot of difficulties, but we managed to work through it and, blah, blah, blah. But really inside you're screaming, fuck everyone who thought I couldn't do it, and then watch the next one.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to blow your fucking socks off, and you guys had better pony up and pay market value for whatever I'm doing. Because like I don't expect to make more money than the next guy. I just want to be paid what you're paying for TV shows, and
Right.
I'll work within the budget. But don't try to cheat me or skip me or ask for free or something like that. And we had all those conversations. We had one broadcaster that was like, I'll air it for free if you finish it. And I was like, how am I putting $100,000 into this or whatever, and you want it for free? Like, how is that market value? So, it was amazing how many terrible conversations we had around that. But it toughened my skin and it toughened my resolve, where I was able now to like have a foothold in that space and be able to carry my own in a conversation and know what the numbers are and know how to be treated fairly.
Right. If you can get past a military checkpoint in China, you could deal with a TV executive.
You'd think so.
You'd think so.
But the TV executive still thinks they understand what's going on, but really they're just terrified to lose their job. So
Right.
So they're not interested in taking real risks. And I'm out there taking the real risks.
Assuming it all,
Yeah.
financial and physical risks and emotional risks.
Yeah.
What was the amount of footage that you shot that you ended up going through? Do you recall?
Fuck. Yeah, it was a lot. Like, I think the statistic at the end of the day was we used like between 6 and 8% of our footage.
6 and 8%. And are you able to reveal a rough budget?
We spent about $100,000 of our own
$100,000
of our own money, and that was back in 2010. So that was real money.
Yeah.
That's not like today's $100,000 where like people. I mean, like, inflation's insane. Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah.
Back in the and. I was lucky. I had a great career as a photographer for for a decade in China. Before that, I was able to work for some great publications, and I was able to save up a lot of money. And I decided, like, if I'm going to invest in something, it's going to be myself.
Yeah.
And I really was investing in a new career path.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was worth it. Because, like, you can go to NYU or USC, two great film schools here in the United States, and you can spend $80,000 a year doing a 2-year program.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I looked at that and I was like, because, like, I had this chat with people around me, and there were a lot of people around me who was like, oh, well, you need to go back to school. Like, you want to make TV shows, you want to make film, you should go to film school. And I was like, no. I know how to do this. Like, I know how to be out in the field and get stuff. Like, I know how to go out into the wild and come back with cool shit. Like, I was a photographer, I was a writer. Like, I knew how to structure a trip so that I would go out, talk to people, film, shoot, whatever, and come back with a story. So, like, I got that. So, and I don't want to learn how to edit. I want to hire an editor. So I don't need to go to film school. I just need to make the thing.
Yes.
And that was, and I just was like, if I'm going to spend $100,000, I'm going to spend $100,000 doing it myself.
Well, see, and I appreciate you revealing that, because $100,000 US is a film program for 1 year, a year and a half at a top school.
Yeah.
And here you did something. You didn't make a film. You made a whole TV show. You set a world record. You did the thing.
Yeah.
And so 100,000 sounds expensive, but then when you compare it to a year and a half of, NYU, film school, it's not so expensive. I mean, it's like, why? Of course, that makes total sense to do what you did.
Yeah. But it's just hard. I mean, it's hard to take your savings account and watch it disappear. It's hard to have that conversation with your partner.
Right.
It's hard to, it's just not easy.
It just shows how costs at universities have just we've become numb to how much that really costs.
Yeah.
So we look at what you did and it's like, well, that's so expensive. It's like, actually, in perspective, it's not. I mean, it's very obviously what you did is very, very tough, but compared to an education, it's like, that's the real education, what you got.
Yeah.
Did.
And I think, if you really believe in yourself, then investing in yourself is the best way to spend money. So, if you want to be a podcaster, and it costs you a couple grand to set up a studio, but you're really passionate about it and you love it. And you and I have had talks about this privately. Like, you got to do it. Like, this is, if this is your calling. And even if it takes you a few years to find your way or to monetize it or whatever, at least you're doing the thing that you believe you're here to do.
Right.
And I really felt like I could make adventure travel television in a way that most people hadn't seen before or even tried before. And it really made me happy to do it. Like, I loved being out there. And eventually, like, after Tough Rides, we did Extreme Treks, and then eventually I did Expedition Asia and another show called The Nomad. And these were all shows I created, produced, directed, and hosted. And it was funny because Tough Rides China set the tone for my entire career, because for those of you who don't know, if you make a TV show and finance it yourself and then sell it afterwards, you keep the rights to the TV show. So, I own every TV show I've ever made because I funded it up front and then recouped on the back end. And that means you're out of pocket for 12 or 18 months. But then at the end of the day, you own the show, and then it keeps paying for years and years.
I was going to say, now, years later, ways that the show is now working for you. Obviously, it gave rise to a trilogy and other shows like Extreme Treks. You have merch. You're wearing a Tough Rides merch right now.
There you go. If you want.
You're doing,
I love it.
Yeah, which is on your website. You have commentary that you're doing.
Yep.
And you did an audiobook.
Yep.
So just ways to keep pushing that and again, have it work for you. When did you start doing the audiobook?
Okay, so we wrote the book soon after we did the filming. Probably early 2011, we started like really trying to write the book. And then, and we settled on this kind of idea where, Colin would write one chapter and I would write one chapter. And that was kind of our way of making sure both of our perspectives were equally, distributed throughout the book, because we didn't know whose voice we should write it in. And eventually we moved away from that because a lot of people gave us feedback, like it was too confusing, like having two totally separate voices in one book. So eventually I kind of wrote the book and kind of incorporated Colin's story in it. But that's kind of what we kind of set out to do, with the book. And then it wasn't until like last year or earlier this year, I think, where I decided to actually do the audiobook. Cause I was sitting around podcasting and doing a few trips for filming here and there. And I had my own studio in my house. Like, I'm podcasting every day. And I was like, well, maybe I should just lay down, the audiobook as well and try to do it in that sense. So, so that was new, and I did the three, the China, India, and Brazil, and we've got another one coming out soon. So that was a lot of fun. And again, I just want to share the story. And, motorcycle companies and motorcycle dealerships and things like that, they still hire me to come out and talk about Tough Rides China or India or Brazil and things like that. So it really, again, once you do something kind of interesting, you own that for life, right? No one can really take that away from you. And you have the chance to share that story forever. Now, like, I don't want to be the 70-year-old guy who's still out there like, I did this in China back in the day. Like, I still want to go out and do the stuff. Like, I don't want to be someone who just talks about what I used to do. And that was a really tough thing to come to grips with around COVID, because it was like, how do I monetize what I've done in the past without being able to continue to do it, without looking like some fucking old fogey who's like, oh, I used to be cool back in the day. Like, I'm still fit. I can still do cool stuff. I can still ride motorcycles around countries. I can still climb mountains, but the world wasn't in a position to allow me to do that. So now coming back, and spending more time here in the US and in LA and getting a chance to share my work with more people, and then also getting to make new stuff. It's been nice. Because COVID were dark days.
Yeah. I loved listening to the audiobook, and there was an intimacy to it, and it's a different medium than the TV show. And there is a little bit more backstory on where you were at in your life, where your brother Colin was at in his life, and what this trip, how it formed, which we talked about in the beginning of our conversation today. One thing that was really interesting was how you ended the book.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a spoiler to talk about that.
No.
We
survived.
You did survive.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
You did it. And I have to say, I mean, 65 days for a 60-day trip is unreal that it was only 5 extra days. It's everything that you guys went through, and people need to listen to it and watch the show. It's just unreal. That was only a 5-day delay. I mean, that's nothing, it seemed.
With a massive clutch breakdown in Tibet, where we had to fly in a clutch from Germany to Hong Kong, smuggle it across the border, fly that guy from Shenzhen to Lhasa, and then get him out so that we could make a repair. Yeah. I think at one stage we were 8 or 9 days behind schedule because of that clutch breakdown. And then we adjusted our schedule on the final leg to pick up more speed.
Yeah.
And also too, we did some things along the way on the expressways that we weren't necessarily allowed to do. Like because China really has like a 2-tier highway system. the brand new kind of 4-6 lane expressways, toll roads, they don't let motorcycles on. And then the secondary roads, where all the stoplights and big trucks are that can't afford to use the toll roads, they're all there. But the secondary roads are super dangerous and super slow. So, if you want to do 700-800 miles in a day, you need to be on the expressway, especially if you're not filming, right? Like today is a riding day, we're going to do 8 to 10 hours on the road. We need to do like 800 miles. Like, how do you do that safely? Well, you got to get on an expressway. You got to get on the toll roads because everyone's going in the same direction and it's nice. You can just sit there and we had to do that on some of the days on the way home just to kind of make up time and to stay safe.
Right. And you close the book with a almost a warning.
This at home. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't try this at home, and almost an anti-recommendation. Can you talk about why you chose to end the book that way?
It was just so hard a trip. Like, and I felt like, my knowledge of how to do things in China and live and work in China really gave us the upper hand in doing that trip. And even though we had a lot of problems and things like that, my ability to execute in China and having that history of working as a journalist and working as a photographer for so many years really allowed us to do that trip. And I think it was just a trip that I didn't want to have to see anyone else try to do who was less prepared than us. And, I was desperate, but I wasn't like, I was professionally desperate, not financially desperate. So I was keen on building another career for myself in television, but I wasn't using my last dollars. Like, I had a good career.
Right.
My wife at the time had a great career. So
it was still calculated. You weren't careless. You weren't reckless.
And for anyone else to kind of go out and put themselves into that position, I was just kind of, I wanted it to be a cautionary tale.
So what do you want people to take away from it? If you don't want them to attempt that exact trek, what do you hope people take away?
Just the spirit of the adventure. I think, two guys not really necessarily knowing what they're getting into. And, I just feel like something's really changed in the last like 10, 15, 20 years where people are just afraid to try things. And I think that's because the cost of living has gotten so crazy and people are coming out of school with massive debt. And that freedom to go and just try silly things or to be free, people don't have that choice anymore. And I really want people to read Tough Rides China, watch the TV show Tough Rides China. It's funny. We called the TV show The Middle Kingdom Ride and we called the book The Middle Kingdom Ride. And then no one knew what the Middle Kingdom was, Zhongguo, which is China. So we changed it to Tough Rides China to fucking sell it because no one knew what the Middle Kingdom was.
The direct translation of China means Middle Kingdom.
Yeah. So then it was like, okay, well, we need to make sure everyone knows what we're doing because people didn't know Middle Kingdom was China. So they're just like, why are you riding a motorcycle around a kingdom? Like, we don't know what you're doing. So we put Tough Rides China. So then we did Tough Rides India and Tough Rides Brazil just to make it a little bit more accessible. But yeah, I just want people to like, understand the spirit of the adventure. Like, whether it's going hiking in Topanga on a Sunday morning or whether it's doing the John Muir Trail, through Yosemite or whatever your journey is in life or whatever your obstacle is that you want to overcome, like just go out and do it, and I think that's the spirit that we want people to take from the book. And I feel like that message is more and more important every day now because I feel, again, adventure is less accessible now than it ever has been just because of the cost of living and the way we're all living, especially in the Western world. And whenever I meet like young photographers or young filmmakers, I tell them to get out of North America immediately and set yourself up in a developing country where the cost of living is cheap, where you can actually hone your craft and learn how you want to tell stories or how you want to create without having the financial burden destroy you and destroy your creativity. Cause that's a real thing. And I was lucky. I moved to China when I was super young. I had no debt. I had no family with me. I was able to rent an apartment, with a bunch of other people. I was able to travel widely in China to build up a portfolio that allowed me to work for the New York Times and all these travel magazines. So I was able to keep my costs super low, to figure out how I wanted to create and how I wanted to tell stories. And nowadays when I meet anyone, I was just like, get out of Dodge, go tell stories about other parts of the world, go live in another part of the world, keep your costs low, find your voice. And then once you've reached a certain level of financial stability or workflow that allows you to be comfortable, then you can come back to Western Europe or the United States or whatever and try to take maybe your career to the next level. And that's kind of how I did it. And I kind of tell people that quite often. And I don't know if it's the right way or the wrong way, but it worked for me. And I feel like that makes the adventure more accessible to people. Like, the worst thing a young photographer in his or her 20s can do is try to live in New York City and be a photographer, unless you want to do fashion or something like that, because that's where it all happens. But if you want to be like a documentary photographer, paying rent in New York City, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And you go back in the day when I started, we were working in film. So it's like, how do you pay for a rent? How do you pay rent in New York City and also pay for film and also pay for a flight to go to India to do some story that you've been wanting to do, or follow in the footsteps of Steve McCurry, or, some of these great National Geographic photographers like Michael Yamashita or Steve McCurry. You might as well just move to India and maybe teach part-time or do something remote. Nowadays that's more possible, more of a likelihood. So I had to teach English when I went to China at the beginning, just to kind of figure out how things work, just to get a little bit of money together. And then I was able to travel and really find my voice, in a storytelling way. And that served me really well.
I like to close out every episode with a question, which is a rule in our industry, a career rule, a rule in life that you don't believe in. The last time I asked you that, you had mentioned you don't listen to other people.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you for another rule that you think is worth breaking.
It's still don't listen to other people. But I think make sure that if you tell a story, it's the story you want to tell. I think, and that, maybe that's don't listen to other people, but maybe it's just be true to your own storytelling and don't bend, to other people's visions of what is in your head. And it's kind of the same as what I said before, but I see a lot of people going into projects these days, where they don't necessarily believe in the vision, but they're getting paid. And I think you're better off doing your own thing at a loss, but putting that out into the world, than following someone else's vision for a paycheck. And it's funny, like I obviously have my own podcast, and you were on it as well. And I just did a podcast yesterday with an actor who he was living in Vancouver, and he was working on this play for like months, and he was the lead in the play, and he was producing this play in Vancouver, and he felt he was perfect for the role. And he had this play, and they were about 2 weeks away from their premiere of the play. And at that exact time, he got a role for a big TV show in the United States, broadcast TV show, good salary, and he was broke. But the role in the TV show wasn't as good as the role in the play. And the play he was doing at a loss. And he turned down the TV show to do the play because that's where his heart and soul was. And it was funny, since that play, he's worked nonstop in Hollywood for the last like 20 years. And he's never not worked. But if he took that TV show and it didn't work out, he would have missed the opportunity in the play. So there's you got to follow your heart. You got to follow your vision. You know what's inside you. You know the story you want to tell. You have to stay true to that beyond anything else. And don't sell yourself short for one paycheck, because your career is decades long, and you're going to have a lot of people offer you paychecks along the way. So that first one can be enticing, but make sure it's the story you want to be known for.
This was incredible, Ryan. I really appreciate you doing this. I have to say, you are inspiring on a lot of levels, and not to be too cheesy, but the reason I'm doing this now and having you back for a second time is because of you. So you mentioned I was on your podcast almost a year ago today. It was around this time last year.
Yeah.
I did your podcast. We didn't know each other. We just reached out on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I saw your setup, and I was driving home, and I had been thinking about a podcast for years, and I saw how you did it, and I thought, there's no excuse anymore. I have to do this. You were gracious enough to be guest number one.
Yeah.
We went a deep dive into your whole background and childhood and your almost career in basketball, and then now with China and all that. And now you came back to do this deep dive, and I just learned so much talking to you. I am thrilled that we get to share this with other people. And so thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I was honored to be your first guest and humbled. And, but yeah, I loved these chats, and it's great to be able to share this with a writer, you know, and someone who crafts stories for a living as well. Because I feel like you get me a little bit more than another podcast host that might not have their fingers deep in storytelling as well. So I'm always thankful to come here and happy to come back anytime.
Hey, before you go, thank you for listening. If you want more episodes like this, make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button. And while you're at it, grab my free guide, The Rule Breaker's Guide to Finding Your Creative Voice. It's a brutally honest roadmap I put together, built from the lessons, mistakes, and breakthroughs I've collected along my journey as a writer. You can download it for free at storyseriespodcast.com. See you in the next one.